You're watching the Survivors to Thrivers podcast. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about a different way to do forgiveness. Interested? Stay tuned. If you're a survivor of violence and are ready to get control of your life again, you're in the right place at the right time. This is the Survivors to Thrivers podcast with your host, Cranford Blackman. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 17 of the Survivors to Thrivers podcast. I'm Cranford, and today I want to talk to you about forgiveness and doing it a little bit differently than maybe you've done before. I want to talk about doing it with a different intent, meaning what is the intention of the forgiveness? And I'll get into that a little bit more in just a minute. Now, I grew up in the southern part of the United States in the Protestant Christian church. So what that means for me is that when I think of forgiveness, what I think of is all of my sins, my badness, everything that I've done that's been bad or wrong, just being wiped away completely. Clean slate as though it has never happened. That's pretty wonderful, right? Well, sure it is. No matter what your religion is, it feels great to be forgiven. But when we're forgiving others, it can be a little bit different. So I have a challenge, or I have in the past, with forgiving people sometimes. Not because I don't want to forgive them, but the problem I have with it is when I look at forgiving someone, especially when it's for something that they've done that's traumatic towards me, especially, I think of forgiveness as wiping their slate clean and forgiving them completely, making it as though what they did never happened. Well, I've got a pretty big problem with that. It did happen. They did it. They chose to do it. And I paid for that with pain and challenge and difficulties in my life because of the sins they committed against me. Now, I'll go ahead and admit to you, I'm kind of a bookworm, and you can probably see that a little bit from my bookshelf. Well, a lot of the stuff that I read ends up being self-help and personal improvement things. And I imagine a lot of you end up reading the same sorts of things because you want a better life. You want to have a better experience of life. You want to be a better you, just like I want to be a better me. Now, maybe you don't see a lot of guys reading that sort of stuff. And fellas, if you haven't read any of it, I would suggest you go ahead and take a look into it, because we guys, we really don't do a very good job of dealing with all those stresses and emotions that we feel like we have to keep inside. And there are some of those books that really explain how we can deal with that instead of being a jerk to our family and friends and the people who love us. Well, anyway, back to these books. And a lot of these books, they explain forgiveness a little bit differently. They talk about forgiveness or not forgiving someone, staying angry at someone. It's like you're drinking poison and expecting the person that you're angry at to get sick from the poison. It makes no sense at all. You're holding all the pain and the stress and the difficulty and the anger and the anguish inside of you, thinking that that person needs to pay for what they've done or they are wrong. And you know what? It might be that they have gone on with their life and they don't even think about us anymore. They don't think about what they did to me or what they did to you. It's over for them. It's not bothering them at all. So what is it that forgiveness is supposed to do? What is the intended purpose of it in this situation? They're not looking for our forgiveness, more than likely. So what we want to do, just like these books have explained to us, is we want to free ourselves. You see, that anguish and anger, those bad memories that we carry around, that's our extra baggage. And we've heard that metaphor before. Do you really want to talk to that person? They seem like they're carrying a lot of extra baggage. Well, those memories, that anguish, that pain, those challenges, those are extra baggage. And we have to carry that around and use our own energy, whether it's from our emotional energy, our psychological energy, to maintain that upset, that anger, that disgust with them. I've heard it mentioned that it's like letting someone live in your head rent-free, but I think it's a little bit different. Think of it more like this. We keep that idea, that person, and whatever the incident, or maybe it was many incidents, we keep them locked up in our head like a prisoner. We're the one keeping them there. And what does a prison have to do with a prisoner? They have to take care of them. They have to feed them, house them, make sure that they're well. And we're doing the same thing to those people who have done things to us. We're keeping them in our head, in our memory, in our energy, and the only cost is to us. We're the one paying the bill. So the stuff I found in those books, it made a lot of sense to me. But the problem is, I could never figure out, how do I do that? How do I forgive them and get them out of my head without feeling like I have said what they did to me was okay? Or maybe it's not to me. Maybe it wasn't something done to you. Maybe it was something someone did to your spouse, to your parent, or to your children. And whoever it was, I know for me, I don't want to give them a get out of jail free card for that. I don't want them to have a clean slate on it. I expect them to pay for what they did. And whether it comes from actual law enforcement putting them in jail, or from an emotional challenge they have for the terrible thing they did, or from the universe or God or karma or whatever you call it, paying them back for the terrible things they did, I expect they deserve that. So I couldn't figure out, how do I do that? How do I let go of it without feeling like I'm saying what they did was okay and that I'm going to let them off the hook this time? Because I'm not. And I don't think you want to let them off the hook either. I was actually sitting and meditating on this the other day, and something popped into my head. And I really appreciate when the universe or God speaks to me like this. It's like a whole idea all by itself, completely put together and ready to go, popped into my head. And I looked at it and I thought, that might work. I think I'm going to give it a go and see if it works. So I decided to give it a go. So I sat down, closed my eyes, and did this imaginary or this visualization so that I could see the process going on. And when I explain it to you in just a little bit, that's how you'll probably want to do it too. So I sat down and I started this process. I closed my eyes and I started thinking about everyone who has hurt me. Now, as you can see, I'm an older guy, so in 50 plus years, that's a pretty long list of people that have done bad things to me or hurt me or betrayed me. But sure enough, I started going through the list of the bigger ones, the ones that just still stay fresh in my head. They stay fresh in my personality. I can feel it in them. Anytime I see something that happens to someone else, like what they did to me, those feelings come up again. So I started going through everyone, friends, family, co-workers, bosses, and I started doing this process with them. And the strangest thing happened. I started feeling lighter, like I had more space inside of me. And it was incredible. And not only did I feel lighter, I also felt like I wasn't letting those people off the hook. Fate was still going to pay them their due for what they did. Now, I don't feel like I'm being harsh about that. I think we're all responsible for what we do, and we pay for it. Even if someone has forgiven us, we're still going to pay for it because of what we did, whether it's the law that takes the payment, or whether it's fate or the universe that takes the payment. And I don't mean for that to sound like I'm being vindictive. The point of this is to let go of what happened, to let go of that person and what they did. But I'm absolutely okay with them still paying the penalty for what they did, whether it's through the judicial system or fate, or whether spiritually they pay for it. I'm okay with that. So what is this amazing process of personal release? Well, I'm going to show you. And now, like I said, when I did it, I closed my eyes, and I would suggest for you to do the same too, because in visualizing it, through our imagination, it makes it much more powerful than if we just think about it. So only do this when you're somewhere safe, in your home or in your hotel room. Don't do it while you're driving or in the elevator or in the lobby somewhere where you need to be paying attention, right? I mean, I teach about situational awareness, and I talk about that all the time. So do this with your eyes closed when you're in a safe place where you don't have to worry about whatever's around you, okay? So I'm going to show you here. Don't close your eyes now. You need to see this, okay? So let me show you what I did. I have a couple of props here. And this is my prop. This is a stress relieving doll that my son gave me. It's got a name, and I'm glad you can't read it because, well, it's got some language in it. But we're going to use this guy as my visualized person who did something wrong to me. As you can see, there's a string on this. Now, if this is the person that did something bad to me that I'm imagining, I picture them in my head. Now, this is the string that is tied to me as well as to them. So I have to carry this memory around all the time. All the time, I have to carry it. Remember, I was talking about using our emotional and psychological energy to carry this thing around, to keep this locked up in my head, and I'm the only one paying for it. I'm paying the light bill up there. I'm paying for the food and the water and the sewer up there. So what I do, I picture this person, and I think about what they did, and I think about this rope that is tying them to me. And then what I do, I say to them, I've held you long enough. I'm going to let you go now. There's no reason for me to keep holding on to you. And then I picture myself pulling that string and letting the rope come off. And that person is then no longer tied to me. I've let them go. I don't have to carry them anymore. It seems simple, doesn't it? But don't let the simplicity of it fool you. I'm telling you, I did this for about a half an hour the day it popped into my head, going from person to person to person to person. And I could not believe how much better I felt when I was done. They weren't off the hook, but I just didn't have to carry that energy and pain and memory around anymore. Now you might be watching thinking, hey Cran, the person that did something to me did a lot of things to me. I don't think I can sit there and picture myself untying 400 strings from that person. Well, you don't have to. And here's why. I had the same thought. I mean, there are certain people in my life who've been there for years, and they did many, many things. So here's the way it worked for me, because this popped into my head too the same time I sort of received this idea, if we can say that's what happened. So if someone has done a lot of things or something really terrible, I mean, you could live with a spouse who just does many terrible small things all the time that just erodes at your emotion in your relationship. Or it could be that somebody did a terrible thing to you. Let me explain it like this. If I think of somebody who lied to me once, an acquaintance, not a close friend, and it hurt my feelings, but I still think about it because, man, that guy was just a jerk. Why would he lie to me? When I picture him in my head, maybe it is just the simple string that I untie. Okay. But maybe it was, or maybe next I think about someone who lied to me, but it was at work and it was on purpose so that they could get credit for something I did or to make me look bad, and it ended up making me lose my job or get a poor review. Well, that's a lot worse, because now you're talking about affecting my ability to take care of my family financially. You're talking about my income that you're damaging. Well, that's bigger. So maybe I think of them. Remember, I showed you my string guy a minute ago. Well, look at this. It's a much bigger rope, because what he did was bigger. It was more impactful. It hurt more. Or the same might be for your spouse who has done things for the last 3 years before you finally were able to get away from them. Or it can be a boss who does terrible things. But the same thing. You go ahead and take that person and picture them in your imagination, but with a bigger rope, because what they did was worse. And you do the same. For the things that you've done to me, I'm letting go of you. Not forgiving you, but letting go of you and the situation. That's what you're forgiving. You're going to let that person fall away. You're going to let that situation fall away. So the more someone did to you, or the worse something was, a lie might be a string. Somebody hurting your job might be a rope. I mean, it could also be, an assault or a molestation. I know that some of the people in my visualizations were wrapped up in those huge ropes that you see holding a ship to a dock. I mean, they were huge because they've done some terrible things to me, or many things over and over and over, destroying relationships or entire years of my life. That's a big deal. So it was a very big rope for me to untie, to let that situation and that person not be tied up in my head anymore. Now, as I said before, it's a simple process, but it's a very powerful process. And you may feel the effects of it immediately, or they may take a little while to kick in. I know for me, I felt it immediately. In the next several days, I was just very clear that I felt so much lighter. But just because you've let someone go or let an incident go doesn't mean that that incident or that memory won't try to sneak back in to your life. And that's okay. But here's what I want you to do when that happens. I want you to talk to that memory, to that feeling, to that emotion. And I want you to say this to it. I don't carry you with me anymore. I let you go so that I can be free of you. And that will remind your subconscious and yourself, your energy, that is something that you have let go and that you don't need to think about anymore. And no matter how many times it comes up for you, every time, just remind it. Remind yourself, I let that go. I don't have to carry it anymore. I released it so that I can be free. This really has helped me immensely. I don't know why an idea like this popped into my head, but I am so grateful for it. I know that there are things that I've been carrying for years and even decades, as many of you probably do too. When you're a survivor, it doesn't matter if it's something that happened last week or happened 35 years ago, it can still affect you. And we still tend to carry it around. So I'm so grateful that this process showed up in my mind and that I can share it with you. I hope it will help you as well. And when you do this process, please share with me in the comments how it felt to let go of that, how it feels to not have to carry that emotional baggage anymore. I know that terrible things have happened to you, and I would love to hear about the victories that happened to you. Even if they're small victories, just like this, learning to let go of a memory or a person, like a forgiveness that doesn't let them off the hook, but does keep you from having to carry them anymore. That might seem small, but it is a huge victory for survivors who are trying to move into a world of thriving, of enjoying life again. So please do share your experience with me and with the rest of the LabCalf tribe in the comments down below. Everyone that reads about your victory gets a little bit closer to being able to have their own victories. And then I would love for you to share this video with someone that you care about so that maybe they can go through the same process and stop carrying that horrible baggage that affects them and their happiness every day. And after you've done that, be sure to give us a thumbs up and go on over to the website labcalf.com, labcaf.com, and subscribe to my email list so I can make sure that you never miss any of the videos or articles that I put out, or any programs that I'm making available. So until next time, as we keep moving from survivors to thrivers, this is Cranford Blackman reminding you to stay safe and stay strong. See you next time.
To make sure you never miss an episode of Survivors to Thrivers podcast, subscribe at labcalf.com.
1,000 maybe let's try it like this. Your imaginary place? People should make their